We now begin the panel discussion on challenges to international security. This session will discuss traditional security challenges, including new modes of warfare, along with emerging non-traditional challenges, including that of the COVID pandemic, climate change, and economic inequalities. This session aims to generate a substantive debate on the spectrum of challenges facing international security, their repercussions on states, societies, and the prospects and pathways of tackling them. This panel discussion will be moderated by Senior Policy Specialist at the National Security Division, Mr. Syed Hassan Akbar. I would like to request Mr. Syed Hassan Akbar to please come on stage. I would also like to request the esteemed panelists of this session to please come on stage. His Excellency Mr. Zalmay Khalilizad, former U.S. Special Representative for Afghanistan Reconciliation, Mr. Pravin, the co-founder of Force Magazine India. I also welcome the esteemed panelists of this session joining us virtually, Ms. Tehmina Janjua, former Foreign Secretary of Pakistan, Dr. Fu Xiaoqiang of China Institute of Contemporary Relations, and Dr. Wakana Mukai of Asian University, Tokyo. I hand over the session to you, sir.
So ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for this session on challenges to international security. I'm extremely excited to be hosting and moderating this session, which has an esteemed panel from across the world. We're joined in person by Ambassador Zalmay Khalilizad and Pravin Sawhney, and online we're joined by Ambassador Tehmina Janjua, former Foreign Secretary, as well as Wakana Mukai from Tokyo, Japan, and Fu Xiaoqiang from Keynote in China. So welcome to all our speakers and our guests today. As you know that over the last 2 decades, there have been several new challenges, emerging challenges to international security. Perhaps one of the great concerns that people across the world now have is about the rise of global power competition. There is a question that a lot of people ask, which revolves around whether we're moving from a model of international cooperation which helped a lot over the last several decades the world to move and resolve some of the shared challenges that the global community faces as a whole, including climate change, poverty, scarcity of resources, trade, and other shared global challenges. But with the rise once again of global power competition linked with resurgence or perhaps an emergence of Russia and China and other countries as alternative centers of power, of economic strength, of military power, questions are being asked across the world about whether this re-emergence of global competition is going to lead to further conflict. Are we moving away from cooperation as a model? I will start today's discussion with our first panelist, which is online, Ambassador Tehmina Janjua. I hope you can hear me, Ambassador.
I can very well, thank you.
Excellent. My first question to you is that, as I said, there are a lot of concerns about global power competition, and that poses new challenges for developing countries such as Pakistan on how to navigate this new or emerging fluid world order. These raise questions about camp politics. Pakistan has been very specific in saying that we are not part of any camp and would like to be friends with all major powers. How do you see the fluid development of the fluid world order, and what impact do you think and challenges do you think it's creating for developing countries like Pakistan?
Thank you very much, Dr. Hassan, and thanks to all the organizers. It's good to see Ambassador Zalmay Khalilizad and Mr. Pravin, who I follow very closely. I must say that to begin with, your question is very specific and also general in many sense. I'd like to unpackage a bit the international challenges that are there right now. Firstly, the overall global challenge is the rivalry, or whatever you call it, competition between the two major powers right now. Secondly, the threats that the international system are also posed by acute challenges at the regional level, and these are affected by global rivalry. But yes, they have some very specific regional drivers. The rivalry on the global level, if we are to subscribe to the realist school in the US, especially John Mearsheimer, who believes that rivalry will lead to a conflictual situation, and an established hegemon will ensure that its great power position is not challenged. This view has filtered also into US policy making circles, and therefore is a matter of some concern for the rest of the world as well, because it points towards a possible conflict situation. The Chinese point of view is that yes, there is competition which can be managed, and I'm sure my colleague from China will be able to elaborate further on it. In the US too, there are foreign policy experts like Chas Freeman who believe that China does not want to take on US global dominion and hegemonic role. China does not have a Monroe Doctrine or manifest destiny in mind. He worries that US is projecting its own worldview on China, i.e. its view of a hegemon or a major power, and expecting that China wants to do the same. The regional specific context needs to be underscored as well. There are acute flashpoints linked to the global rivalry. Look at Ukraine and the Russian crisis. It reflects the failure of the European security architecture. This regional conflict has far-reaching consequences for the entire world, for Europe, and for the rest of the world as well. And that is one place we need to look at. You talked about impact on developing countries. Impact on developing countries is becoming clear. The price of oil is going up. The difficulties that developing countries are facing in food, in commodities, etc. Looking at the situation in South Asia and the situation in the Middle East, these have close linkages with the global rivalry as well to some extent. Regional specificities come into play, for example, in South Asia and the Middle East. In South Asia, regional specificities are marked by a trajectory of aggressive ideology, which makes it prone to both internal divisiveness and repression, and externally to disconcerting adventurism. And in this context, we can never forget the situation in Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir. This deepens also the anxiety of neighbors, especially when global rivalries align in the regional context. The largest regional power is increasingly aligned with one of the largest global power. This allows them a great amount of latitude in pursuing their regional hegemonic aims and makes them a partner in a very unsettling rivalry. Both are destabilizing influences. Likewise, in the Middle East, the overall global rivalry marked by specific regional contradictions, especially between the Arab world and Iran, intra-Arab divisions centering on domestic politics, democratic struggles, and evolving struggles within. There is, of course, we must never forget at this point, and especially when Mr. Khalilizad is there as well, who's played an important role in the past in Afghanistan as well, that as the Foreign Minister pointed out, that there is a chance to promote durable peace in Afghanistan, and it is therefore important, and that is indicated by the fact that there is one government that controls the entire country. The main objective of the international community should be to have a stabilized country and peace in Afghanistan, which is important for peace within the region as well. And of course, the important focus should be on the humanitarian crisis that is currently prevailing in Afghanistan, and we'll have much to talk about what is being done in this context. I would also like to underscore the crisis awaiting us is also caused by the failure of governments to address concerns of their people, economic insecurity, political representation, as well as the demand of people to have their own voices in their own government. right-wing nationalist governments have been on an increase and have a propensity to resort to strong-arm tactics. There are two other threats that Dr. Hassan had referred to, but I'd like to underscore. Climate change effects on food security and water security are being clearly felt, and in developing countries in particular. The alarming impact can only be grasped in a dystopian sci-fi movie, if I may be so I'm not being facetious, but it's a reality that we keep on seeing only in sci-fi movies, but is likely to be played out. Linked to climate change is the scary prospect of pandemics. We've seen it. More pandemics worse than COVID-19 are likely to occur. COVID brought the global economy to a standstill, and this is the thing that we need to look at globally. Advancements in technologies, military modernizations are materials for lethal wars that definitely need to be addressed. International arms control and disarmament mechanisms require serious consideration because a lot of them has eroded. There's also need to bear in mind the immediate core threats, including food security, water security, climate change, that need to be addressed in the overall political context. And this is where the developing countries are increasingly facing dangers, and Pakistan, as you know, is amongst the list of the top countries that are vulnerable to climate change. So these are points that I thought I'd put on the table to have further discussion.
Thank you, Ambassador Janjua. Now, I'd like the opportunity to ask Ambassador Khalilizad, as Ambassador Janjua pointed out, that the conflict in Ukraine, or the war in Ukraine, really has highlighted a failure in some ways of the European architecture, security architecture. During the Trump administration, there were a lot of questions about the transatlantic partnership and what that meant for that part of the world. And while we've seen a resurgence under Biden administration of the US taking its role with the slogan that America is back, we're at the same time seeing, Germany and other countries announce that they're going to increase their defense spending, etc. And there still remain questions about the strength of the transatlantic partnership and what that means for the future of European security. So in your view, how has the conflict in Ukraine really challenged traditional security architectures? Has it challenged them? And do you think that it is going to have profound changes and challenges for how many of these countries operate in the future?
Well, thank you very much. First, it's a pleasure to be back in Islamabad in a different role, and I congratulate the National Security Advisor and the Pakistani colleagues who have organized this forum. I would like to put my comments in a broader context, if you do not mind. And that context is that we are in a very dangerous and new era that we're entering. For the last 30 years, since the end of the Cold War, the world was not a scene of great power rivalry. The balance of power had shifted decisively from bipolarity with the disintegration of the Soviet Union to one in which one power, the United States, was the world's preeminent power. And many conflicts, therefore, were smaller conflicts, regional conflicts, terrible for the places where those conflicts occurred. But the chance of big power war had diminished significantly with that change, with that transition to the new order. What we're seeing now is the beginning of a new phase in world politics in which a a status quo preeminent power is being challenged in terms of balance of power by an emerging new power seeking preeminence in its own right. And these moments of shift in balance or attempts at changing the balance, changing the status quo at the global level can be very dangerous. It can often lead to war. And big power wars, as we have seen in the 20th century, where you had a multipolar system that tried to, through competition, cooperation, sought to avoid preeminence or hegemony by a single power, led to 2 world wars. So I believe that the coming period is going to be potentially an extremely dangerous period. And this phenomenon, this challenge, although there are many other challenges that we have discussed in the sessions already here, and we've talked already at the beginning of this session, I think would be influenced, be affected by this central new development or emerging development that is underway. How to avoid a war, how to deal with global challenges in the context of this change and the return of maybe a bipolar system, how to deal with issues of regions, all will be influenced to a degree, to one degree or another, by this fundamental problem. Now, with regard to Europe, we see already the manifestation of this problem, in which we have the conflict in Ukraine, unexpected in the way it has happened, and in the way that it is moved forward and is moving forward, is very much being influenced by the phenomenon. And what happens as a result of this war will also have severe implications. So far, what we see, the result is, one, that Russia's performance has been poorer than it's thought. Its military machine has not performed. And that is its military capability is really, Russia is a one-dimensional almost big power. Its economy is half the size of California's economy. But it has a substantial military capability, and that capability, at least conventionally, is performed not that well. And it probably will affect the future of Russian arms sales around the world, given how it has performed. And although I believe that there is a need for a political settlement, and one needs to make sure that diplomacy remains active, but its unintended effects has been to strengthen the NATO alliance, its cohesion so far. What we can see, it is likely to lead to more burden sharing, which the United States has sought within the alliance, so that the U.S. can be freed some of its resources to focus on the other regions, and in particular with the more comprehensive competition that the U.S. and China are involved in, which is not unlike Russia, which has only one dimension, the military. In the case of China, it is the military, definitely, and it's technological, because there are areas of technology where China has a significant, perhaps even lead. When we talk about hypersonics, for example, you talk about 5G, and it has also geopolitical, regional dimension to it, but it also has it is a multiplicity of issues on which the two sides are involved, and the big challenge for both countries and therefore for the international community is how can this transition towards a new bipolarity take place peacefully? Can that transition be managed? Because if it's not, and some are saying war is inevitable almost in such situation, is the biggest problem that we face. So as an opening, that's what I would like to say.
Thank you, Ambassador Khalilizad. I'd like to put my next question, and this is a good segue into my next question for Pravin Sawhney. Ambassador Khalilizad talked about a bipolar world and a rising power or an emerging power challenging a large established power in a unipolar world. Graham Allison has written a fantastic book that explores whether such contestations lead to conflict necessarily or not. In your view, Pravin, do you think that we're still in a unipolar world? Is China rising or has it risen? And lastly, do you think conflict is inevitable eventually in such circumstances?
Thank you very much. First of all, I need to thank the organizers of this security dialogue who have invited me. Now, what I intend to do is, in about 5 or 7 minutes, the traditional wisdom is that from a unipolar world, we are now moving to the structure of a multipolar world. So what I wish to do is to say that I do not agree with this. In my thinking, and I will explain why I don't agree with this, in my thinking, from a unipolar world, we have already moved to a bipolar world. Now we are looking at stability in the bipolar world, which should come by about 2030, because stability is something you can never get in a multipolar world, because all the poles will be sort of involved, crisscrossing one another. And as I explain this, I will also suggest the geo-economic roadmap for Pakistan that Pakistan has been talking about. Perhaps I have an idea which I would like to share with you. So my start point should be that starting from 1991, I am not calling the demise, it is the disbandment of the Soviet Union. December 1991 to 2013. 2013 is the year when Xi Jinping announced the Belt and Road Initiative. I will explain why I say this. These 22 years was the unipolar period where the United States was supreme. 2013, in my understanding, is the cutoff when we entered into the bipolarity, which means I believe 2013 is the day when China was no longer rising, China had risen. So all this talk that goes on that we are trying to contain China, China is a risen power. And why do I say that China is a risen power? There are reasons for that. The reasons are that first of all, they decided two things happened 1 year before that. They are a bit of a background to this. In 2012, many of you would understand that something called deep learning, which will show the roadmap of artificial intelligence, which is the fourth industrial revolution that we are now getting into. Deep learning was discovered in 2012. And in November 2012, Xi Jinping also took over, both as the chairman of the Central Military Commission and the General Secretary of the party. Something unprecedented had never happened with any of the General Secretaries, that they simultaneously hold both the posts, but he took that. This is what happened then. Then in 2013, he proposed the Belt and Road Initiative. Now, Belt and Road is a very complex and a very useful sort of a thing which talks of geoeconomics. It is about geoeconomics. So the first phase announced in 2013 was about the land belt, and it was about the maritime Silk Road. So this was about the technology, which is the infrastructure building technology, in which I understand China is an exceptional power. It's an exceptional nation. Again in 2013 is when Xi Jinping proposed to President Obama the idea of a new type of major power relationship, which very clearly meant that all right, let's keep our concerns, be sensitive to each other's concern, and on the commons we both can work together. It was not accepted by the Americans for obvious reasons. I will not go in those details. So again in the same year, he was reported to have said, Xi Jinping, that it is now the rise of the East and the decline of the West. East obviously led by China and West by the US. This is what happened in 2013. 2014, quickly I'll give out these timelines. 2014 was an inflection point, first inflection point in Chinese. What this meant was that basically mobile internet came there. Mobile internet basically meant that now they had laid the fiber optic cables, they laid the subsea cables, and the last mile connectivity was provided by 5G, and everybody sitting in the village also of China, he need not come to a big city like Shanghai, something like your country, a villager sitting there need not come to Lahore or Peshawar to look for a job. He can sitting there. Mobile internet will provide him job, will provide him everything. You see, this is where your geo-economics also comes in. This is something which can be done because fiber optic cables have come here, sea cables have come here. So what happened, this inflection point was that the Chinese had the maximum internet users in the world in 2014, and they lifted 800 million people out of poverty. So what they did was, this came to be known as the digital connectivity. And the same year in 2014, they used the digital connectivity in the PLA, and they came up with what is called informatized war. This happened in 2015. Now, because of this, the idea came to the Chinese that now we need to expand the BRI, bring it into the digital Silk Road. Now, digital Silk Road again has two components. One is the hard and the soft cyberspace connectivity. The hard connectivity is precisely what they are giving to the BRI nations, which is about what I said, the digital connectivity. Pakistan also is getting on that. So, which is your fiber optic cables have been laid, more will be laid. Then what happened is, after that, in 2017, the second inflection point has come in China. The second inflection point was that from digital connectivity, they realized connectivity has to move to artificial intelligence and data. So, which is the fourth industrial revolution, and that is precisely where they have set up those data centers, cloud services, they all have come up. This is all that can come in your country, because you already have a nodal agency run by the Pakistan Air Force, which is the Center for Artificial Intelligence and Computing, which is the nodal agency for your country. So basically, you are today in a position to bring in your country, even if you don't get the connectivity, the north and south and east and west, you are in a position to bring in the third and the fourth industrial revolution with the help of the Chinese. Now, this is about the peaceful rise, about the rise of China. It was a risen power then. Now, the second question is, will the rise be peaceful? The answer is yes. Why? Because in the vanguard you have technology. I just explained you the third and the fourth industrial revolution. So it will be a peaceful rise. If it be so, then we are certainly looking at the bipolarity. That is what we are looking at. And in the artificial intelligence, which will be a very key thing, because we have entered the age where artificial intelligence, emerging technologies will play a very big role. Here, there are 6 stacks. I will just end with this so that I don't take much time initially. There are 6 stacks. When you talk of artificial intelligence, you talk of hard power, which is your chips. You talk of soft power, which is your algorithms. You talk of human resources, who will write those algorithms. In all these 3, the Americans are still the leaders in the world. But there are 3 more. The fourth one is data. This is where the Chinese have an advantage. Fifth one is application of AI. They have excelled in this. Why? Because, and this is the grouse that the Americans have about the Chinese, because the Americans have done the innovation, Chinese have done the commercialization of that and made money out of it. AI applications. They are very good at that. And the last thing what they have done is, which is the integration of AI, which is what we call the Internet of Things. They are very good at that. So the point I am making is very simple, and this is the reason why the Americans, in my understanding, Americans hate competitors, because they've had those glorious 22 years as a unipolar, in a unipolar world, which is why they have come up with this negative agenda, as he rightly pointed out, the ambassador, that in 5G, Chinese are excelling. 5G provides in the third industrial revolution the last mile connectivity, and it is the backbone in the fourth industrial connectivity. It is so important. If Pakistan can get Huawei 5G in this country, you actually can prosper in about 5 to 8 years. I can give you this in writing. This is possible.
Thank you, Pravin.
Yeah. So I think I'll pause here and then we can continue.
Right. I'd like now, this is a good segue into bringing on Fu Xiaoqiang from China, Kicker, to talk about China's perspective on how it views the developments in the global world. Particularly, China today faces a number of exclusionary groupings, partnerships, some military, some economic, in the form of the Indo-Pacific strategy, the Quad, AUKUS, etc. And these multiple groupings are really, about the containment of China and competing with China. So, Xiaoqiang, my question to you is that how does China view the Asian security architecture in the face of such exclusionary groupings, and its role in the wider international order in the coming decades? Over to you, Xiaoqiang. I think you're mute. You may be mute. Can you try again?
Oh, sorry. Thank you. First, I would like to thank you for inviting me to this very important event. For Chinese, I think international security, particularly in the Asia Pacific, is undergoing profound changes. Before I talk about the Asia Pacific, I think the failure or defacing of the post-Cold War international security mechanism is a problem. It is shown in as a Russian-Ukraine situation. The Ukraine issue has a complex historical background and realistic factors. However, what cannot be ignored is that the important cause of the surround of the conflict is NATO's eastward expansion, which is essentially the result of the superpowers' pursuit of absolute security, which is Cold War mindset. So I think Ukraine has become the front line of great powers confrontation. The current security assurance for European by a military bloc turned out to be totally failure. And the prospect of a balanced, effective, and sustainable European security architecture will become more bleak. So for the Asia Pacific, I think alliance diplomacy or political and military alliance has caused serious damage to the international security mechanism and affecting the stability in this region. In today's world, advocating great power competition, adhering to geopolitical game, upholding the so-called Indo-Pacific strategy and formulating alliance or bloc cause great division in this region and even in the world. The eastward expansion of NATO is the root cause of the current insecurity in Europe. And in Asia-Pacific, the attempt to create a military political bloc under the so-called quadrilateral security dialogue will also bring insecurity to Asia and the Pacific. Regional countries should follow this trend on the alert. I think, moreover, the AUKUS, you mentioned AUKUS, has emerged in the name of security, but has openly challenged the international non-proliferation regime and encouraged international arms race, posing a major threat to international security. In a word, pursuit of one's own security and absolute security at the expense of other security and the strengthening of military bloc is totally fruitless approach. I think it will only backfire and create new and greater insecurity in Asia-Pacific. For China, we cherish peace and not destroy regional peace. Today's peaceful situation in the Asia-Pacific is hard-won, and I think it should be carefully maintained. In the past, the 5 principles of peaceful coexistence and the 10 principles of Bandung Conference were born in Asia. The Sino-US Shanghai Communique originated in Asia. At present, I think we will have more open ideas and push some new ideas in the regional security activity. I agree that this world is not a unilateral world or bipolar world. It's a multilateral world. 80 years ago, President Xi Jinping put forward the concept of the common, comprehensive, cooperative, and sustainable security. It says that the meaning is particularly important. No country can seek its own so-called absolute security at the expense of the security of other countries, or building some military bloc alliance cannot resolve the security issue in Asia-Pacific and in the world. So, in the end, I think that Asia's latest eastward expansion is similar the so-called quadrilateral security dialogue or Indo-Pacific strategy. So, if this trend continues, it will greatly damage the security in this region, and the arms race, and the proliferation issue, and the regional countries' security will be damaged by this new trend. Thank you.
Thank you, Xiaoqiang. Now we'll move on to Wakana. I hope you can hear us, Wakana. So my question to you really is that, I don't like to use the word middle powers, but part of that multilateral world that Xiaoqiang was talking about, Japan has an important role in that sense. What we're seeing in the last 2-3 years is that there is this growing concern about other countries in the multilateral world which were perhaps not so focused on expanding their defense industry and their military capability, now having to face those questions. In Japan, Shinzo Abe, your previous Prime Minister, has publicly talked about how Japan needs to move beyond a traditional approach to its security and take on a more, take on more military resources to be able to navigate an increasingly complicated world power. We've seen the same in Germany. So do you think that what we're now witnessing in the world is changing some of the fundamental assumptions that countries like Japan made about how the international order or combined security in the international order would operate?
Thank you very much for giving me the floor. I would first like to congratulate and also like to thank the organizers for hosting this very important and timely dialogue. I think we do need dialogue in this most difficult time that we are currently facing. So going back into the topic that you've mentioned, and I'm going to kind of try to broaden a bit for discussion. So the international security environment is rapidly shifting, and there are actually many challenges that we face today. So from a Japanese perspective, and perhaps a more broadly, say from an Indo-Pacific perspective, and presumably, I guess from an international perspective as well, one of the biggest challenges that we do face have been facing for the last several years or so on is no doubt the competition between the US and China and how that influences many of the policies that we pursue. Everything, whether it is on traditional matters or non-traditional matters, they seem to all go back to the great power competition issue. So on the hard security front, as you've mentioned, the meaning and reality of collective security, the importance of alliance mechanisms, all of these concepts that we have taken for granted for a very long time are now on the verge of reevaluation, if not challenged and or reframed. We'll see how that goes, but I think that having discussions domestically is a very healthy thing. On a more softer front, the division of the international community is also a very serious issue since we are all connected economically and politically to either or both of the ends. So that is perhaps the downside or negative effect of globalization and internationalization that we have for many years again taken for granted and cherished as a good phenomenon. So in Japan, like in Pakistan, as the foreign minister had delivered in his speech, debates on economic security have gained much attention for the last several years. So these concerns emerged precisely because of the fact that relations between the US and China have entered a rather gloomy phase, and that the competition may cause negative effects on Japan's national security, national interest, and growth. So the situation is becoming more serious with the ongoing war in Ukraine as well. The current administration here in Japan has laid down the issue of economic security as one of its top priorities. Although Japan is, well, we can say that it is an economically rather wealthy country, it still remains vulnerable in certain areas that can seriously affect national security, such as medical products, semiconductors, and of course, energy. So these concerns are doubled by the fact that imminent threats caused by cyber attacks are becoming more and more of a reality since we are currently heavily reliant on a digitalized world. So personally, I think that economic security is a very important issue, that it relates directly to a country's future. But on the other hand, trying to kind of connect issues that are necessarily not directly a security topic to traditional security matters is a bit worrisome. So it is quite easy to talk about issues and problems and say that it is a matter of national security, because then it would be really easy to gain public attention. It would be really easy to gain public support and the necessary budget to pursue these kinds of policies. But we also have to remember that tying everything to security, or in other words, securitizing issues, not just regarding economy, but also other issues as well, can be dangerous and may invite unexpected consequences. So what do we need and what is lacking? I think trust and confidence on the state level is continuously lacking, especially among those countries that do not stand on the same team or the same side. We need to remind ourselves that everything does not go as we expect, but we do live on the same planet and that we need to respect one another. We do need to respect the rule of law. We do need to build trust and confidence amongst one another. So again, dialogue, as we are seeing here today, together with diplomacy, exchanging honest opinions, becomes even more important, rather than trying to change the current international order by force. And I'll stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Wakana. I think some of the comments you made were exceptionally brilliant about how there is a need to bring back trust and cooperation between states and talk about areas where there can be dialogue moving forward. So my question to you, Ambassador Janjua, is that you talked about how this great power rivalry or competition is influencing regional states, and you talked about South Asia. We know that, for example, in the this whole concept of the US supporting India in its national security strategy as a net security provider for a region as large and as vast and as diverse as the Indian Ocean or South Asia brings forth certain challenges for countries like Pakistan. So how do you think great power competition, or this concept of focus on making certain powers or certain countries net security providers, complicates and really further creates challenges for bilateral cooperation or resolution of issues between countries like Pakistan and India? Is global power competition complicating it for the region? I think you're silent, Ambassador.
Sure. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
The question that you raise is very pertinent, and I also mentioned it in my presentation. The fact is that global, as I said, the alignment between the largest country, largest power, so to say, the United States, and the largest regional power creates complications within the region, because this sort of what allows the government in power in India to carry out its policies of expansion, of hegemony as well, without any consideration of what the neighbors or the smaller neighbors would want. And this has become all the more blatant, if I may so, under the present government in India, which has not been able to develop friendly relations or relations of friendliness towards all its neighbors, and especially Pakistan. Let me underscore that when the current Prime Minister in Pakistan came to office, he extended his hand of friendship to India, and he said that we are ready for dialogue with India and ready to talk all issues with India, and that he would take 2 steps if there would be one coming from the Indian side. But unfortunately, the response from the Indian side has not been very positive. And in addition to that, the policies being pursued within India itself are towards Kashmir, for example, which is a very important issue from Pakistan's perspective. It's a problem that is accepted by the UN Security Council as an issue and has been on the agenda of the UN Security Council. And I don't want to go into the details of it, but the reality is that for 70 years or so, India was undertaking these policies of subjugation and of occupation towards the people of Jammu and Kashmir. But then suddenly on 5th August 2019, it decided, this contrary to what the UN Security Council resolution says, what India's own constitution says, what agreements, bilateral agreements between Pakistan and India exist. It went and announced an annexation of Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir, and the level of violations of human rights violations and the attempts to create a new geographical identity within Kashmir, i.e. bringing in more people against the law of Kashmir into Jammu and Kashmir, thus making it difficult for the implementation of UN Security Council resolutions, because the UN Security Council resolutions say that there should be a plebiscite that should be held in Indian occupied in Kashmir to decide for the people of Kashmir to decide what they want to do with their future, and that the right to self-determination was accorded to them. But all of that was set aside, and we believe that it was set aside also because there was not because the largest power in the world, the United States, was aligning with India, calling it a pivot state as far as its strategy is concerned within the Asian region, and I wouldn't call it the Indo-Pacific region. I know the Americans like to call it the Indo-Pacific region, but it has always been the Asian-Pacific region, and suddenly it became the Indo-Pacific region because the Americans decided to call it the Indo-Pacific region, and hence obviously it impacted, giving India a role while the reality is that India itself is not fulfilling its obligations under international law or within the UN itself or within the UN Security Council, and the latitude they get from the United States obviously greatly affects the possibility of having some kind of discussion or some kind of debate or some kind of resolution of the problems within the region. I agree with our colleague from Japan that there is need for debate and discussion, but such debate and discussion can only take place if there is a rational response from your interlocutors, and that's not been happening, and that's not been happening because there is a great deal of importance that's been given to one player in the region, while there is a reality on ground which is difficult and which needs to be addressed. The people of Jammu and Kashmir are facing more and more blatant violation of their rights. Their entire history is being changed. I remember listening to a Kashmiri filmmaker on one of the Western television networks, and he said that my own narrative has been taken away by India. The Indians are talking about Kashmir. You look at the Kashmir Files now, the movie that's been made, which goes ahead to give a narrative which is a purely Indian narrative and has got nothing to do with reality. I mean, you read the article in the Washington Post yesterday by Rana Ayub, who says that when she went to watch the movie, she was appalled by the kind of slogans that were being made, but the kind of negativity that was being created, and hence there is a we have to the international community, the largest power, and the rivalry between the two major powers needs to be addressed in a more logical manner. The Chinese don't do that, but the Americans have taken a side on the Indian side and have thus convinced the Indians that they can do whatever they want to within India, with its neighbors, and all its neighbors have problems with it.
Thank you, Ambassador Janjua. I think, you highlighted and hinted at the enormous amount of exceptions, frankly, that have been given to India, whether it's the NSG, and other forums where, India has consistently been given exceptions, and it raises really important questions about in this conflict in Europe where India stands, I think that these are questions that even in the West people will have to confront as they go forward. My question to you, Ambassador Khalilizad, we all know that you've been deeply involved in the negotiation process, the peace process in Afghanistan. It's a country which you have, ties with. You understand the country. You've been involved with it for several years. And Afghanistan really, in its position, its geolocation is such that it connects, many parts of the Near East. Central Asian countries, Iran, Pakistan, extending all the way to China and Russia and the Middle East. How do you see the future of Afghanistan, really? And do you think that there is, even if a limited, but a real possibility of Afghanistan being able, first and foremost, to economically support itself in the future, which remains a key concern for the stability of Afghanistan, and then play an important role in bridging the region together? So what are your views about the future of Afghanistan? What are some of the challenges, and what are some of the solutions that we can look forward to making this, the Afghanistan story, finally a success?
Well, thank you. Before responding to that, if I might add a word or two on the implications of this bipolarity, the new bipolarity, and the challenges and opportunities it has, including for Pakistan. In the Asia-Pacific part, one key requirement is for stability and avoidance of war, you need a balance of power. And as in the last phases of the Cold War, when we felt, some perhaps incorrectly, that the Soviets were getting too aggressive, too preeminent maybe in certain areas, invasion of Afghanistan, Somalia, and what have you, that we balanced by strengthening China, improving our relations with China. And to some extent, although that I give the Chinese a lot of credit for their success that they've had, amazing success, but they also can be attributed to the shift and the relocation of many American industries in China. And now that China is the strategic competitor, we are pursuing a policy of balancing, and India could be seen as a potential balancer, playing a role in the balance of power to avoid Chinese hegemony. Intentions putting aside, because then we are in international politics, there is no trust. It's on balance of capabilities, and therefore, for precluding Chinese hegemony over Asia, will be a central feature of the coming period, and India aspires to play the role that China did, and therefore benefit in the Soviet period, I'm saying. And this is obviously a dilemma for Pakistan, which has a strong relationship with China, and as we heard from a very excellent statement by the chief, that wants to have good relations also with the West. So it may be a role that it has to, in this new configuration, what is Pakistan's role? With the core national security issue, the central feature of the coming system, this new bipolarity, and it's all its dimensions, which will be, as I said, technological, economic, geopolitical, in shaping the order, the future international order. Now, on Afghanistan, I think that it already has been affected, Afghanistan, by this new global order that's emerging that I talked about. The United States could have stayed there for many more years, but it decided that the big problem is now this other one, and therefore it needed to save resources for the bigger competition, to focus on that. And this has been an opportunity for Afghanistan and for the region, in my view, this US adjustment. And it faces a couple of alternative futures, one positive and one negative, and we all will have a role in that, in my view. On the positive side, the war has ended already. There is a government that controls all of Afghanistan. But on the negative is that the government is not legitimate in the sense that it doesn't come through what it had agreed to do in the agreement that ended the war, meaning the US war, which was that the new government would be as a result of intra-Afghan negotiations, so that it reflects the diversity. It doesn't mean that individuals have to be in the central government, but there has to be a formula that has broad support, so that's one. And that's work. I think they have some time, not multiple years, but some time to make progress in that regard. That's, in my view, central. Otherwise, 40 years will be that of history could repeat itself. Second is that Afghanistan needs to be somewhat more decentralized. And why I say that, it's up to them, the formula that I said. Because Afghanistan, the government is very centralized, and the economy essentially is run from the center. And when we say political participation, political inclusivity, it's really also economic participation and inclusivity. And if in central Afghanistan, in Hazarajat, a mine has to be developed for the locals to depend on or decide what the locals should get, the decision is made in Kabul. And so economically, the center is also Kabul, and therefore the struggle for who takes what piece of Kabul becomes front and center. That needs to be also addressed. And I think for its economic viability, not only it needs to develop internally, but that viability, that resources that it has cannot be exported without connectivity. And that connectivity is principally to Pakistan and Central Asia. Of course, the East-West connectivity, Pakistan will be included in that. That also includes Iran. And I think that this is also very important for Central Asia. It's important for Pakistan. And I think for the last, at least since the US invasion of Afghanistan, and I'll end with that, we've been talking about this connectivity. During my time in Kabul, we used to call Afghanistan the land bridge. Then somebody else came several years later, we talked about a kind of a new Silk Road. Somebody else came and talked about a kind of Asian roundabout. But we're all talking about, I've been talking about the same thing, but really not a lot of progress has been made in actually actualizing it. Yes, the situation in Afghanistan was difficult. Now it's better with this peace process. We pay all lip service. There is some progress. CASA 1000, for example, bringing electricity, has made maybe 65% progress. But with regard to this railway that people are talking about, to Shah from Tashkent, not very much is going on. Let's be frank. When we talk about building this Turkmenistan pipeline, not much going on. There are big obstacles. we really need, if the countries of the region are serious about this, there has to be a serious effort, there has to be a joint effort, maybe a committee jointly formed, a think tank, a study center that really follows this issue on a day-to-day basis, and when there are obstacles, tries to find solutions. But I think that Afghanistan's future is going to be very much linked by what happens economically to it, what happens politically to it. That I talked about the formula for Afghanistan, that in Afghanistan that works. And one last thing, since I'm in Pakistan, is Pakistan-Afghanistan relations, the disagreement between these two countries after the creation of Pakistan has been the Achilles heel of Afghanistan, which is that because of this dispute, Afghanistan didn't vote for Pakistan to join the UN. Pakistan joined the West after the end of the Second World War. Afghanistan couldn't join the West, although it wanted to, because of its dispute with Pakistan, and it became reliant on the Soviets, which ultimately led to Soviet invasion. The story is long. There has to be, as part of this connectivity, this obstacle that exists in Afghanistan-Pakistan relations that has been a fundamental factor shaping this has to be overcome. And it can only overcome by, in my humble opinion, by economic, trade, integration of Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Central Asia. To make the dispute about the border and the history of the border and the Durand Line and the British and successor state to be less important. In polite audiences, people perhaps do not confront this. I think President Bhutto and President Dawood made some significant progress in their meetings. I advise my Pakistani friends and Afghan friends, they need to read those documents, those memos, those memorandum of conversations. But for the long-term stability and as well as the development that we talked about, we need to, this issue needs to be also addressed. Thank you. Sorry about
No.
Yes.
That's a good point. I think I mean, in my mind, has always remained an extremely important challenge, and one that does require resolution sooner rather than later. Pravin, a lot of people here in Pakistan, and I'm sure amongst our audience, are really thinking about whether India today in 2022 has changed in fundamental ways. And does that change? I mean, we talk, we listen, we read, and we profusely follow the Indian media and the news cycle about what's happening with the rise of the BJP, what's happening within India. But I think equally important for the strategic community and for Pakistan is how that's influencing, both the masses in India about their view on Pakistan, how news channels, for example, are creating a kind of an otherization of Pakistan where it makes it very difficult for any government in India to move forward towards dialogue. Is that a reality? And secondly, is it influencing, because you closely follow the Indian military and you closely follow developments on that account. Has the policy, what we saw in Balakot and then subsequently, a number of, the missile, for example, is it changing Indian policy in terms of kinetic means and an aggressive, what they call, so-called new normal or punitive action towards Pakistan? Is that a fundamental transformation that we're witnessing? And is it complicating the search for dialogue and peace in the region?
See, the BJP has been in power only for 8 years. The Indian Constitution was written in 1950. And the constitution makes two things very clear, that India will be a secular nation and it is a union of states. Now the problem happens is that whenever a government comes which has a majority in the parliament, then the principle of union of state is generally not followed. Because then everything, it becomes a bit authoritarian, things are dictated from the center. Now as far as being a secular state is concerned, that is the only way India can move forward. And mind you, India is not North India. India is too big. India is Middle India, India is South India, India is Northeast. India is huge. So if we just talk of 2 states or 3 states, what we call the cow belt, and we form an opinion that look, the people have changed. No, the people have not changed. People have changed in the sense that yes, there were many people who were sympathizers to the cause of having a right-wing government, of having a right-wing ideology. There were many fence-sitters also who went to that side. But there are still people who within themselves know that look, the constitution says secular. So I think unless the constitution of India is changed, I would always hold hope. Now, the other question is India-Pakistan relations. Now, in India-Pakistan relations, ideally relations should be dictated by the domestic, you see, the government should make a decision. But I see something happening which I would, I can drop a hint because that is part of my book that I am writing. So, you see, there are extraneous factors now which have come into play. For example, China has become a very prominent part now of South Asia. You cannot speak of South Asia, any country in South Asia, India, Pakistan, any smaller country, and not take what the Chinese are thinking into account. So that is the situation. And as you are all aware, we already have, India has a problem with China on the border. So the long and short is, yes, right now I don't think India is seriously thinking about getting into any very serious dialogue with Pakistan. Something that I have noticed during my visit here, that everybody in the government, outside the government, NGOs, everybody is very keen, and as has been given out in your national security policy also, that connectivity and development should be the cornerstone. Army Chief has already spelled out that look, we have spent so many years on Kashmir. Kashmir still remains an issue, but he is also now pushing for exactly what is there in the national security policy. So the long and short of the whole story is, it's a matter of time. India is too big. India has a very vast history, and inshallah I am absolutely certain that India-Pakistan relations will improve, and I'll tell you why. Why they will improve is that even the people who are today aligned with the government in India, they realize within themselves that prosperity of India is linked to prosperity of Pakistan. Why I say that is that this line of control is like a millstone around our neck. Unless we will not get the millstone off, unless there will not be a resolution of this issue, prosperity will not come, because most of the money is going there. And now of course we have an added problem. Now you talking of Balakot, things like Balakot. See, I have been arguing for a very long time. In 1990, the problem started in Jammu and Kashmir. In 1990 was the first time that the Indian Army was inducted there to do the counter-terror operations. Today we are talking of 2022. When you have an army doing counter-terror operations, which is not about war at all, which is tactics, when you do them for decades, then obviously you get prone to doing things like Balakot and surgical strike, because they come to you very easily. You see, because that is what counter-terror operation is all about. When you talk of war, you talk of the entire capability, how do I plan it, how do I plan my campaign. But when you are talking of counter-terror, you are talking of small teams, small things, hit and run, come back. So this is one of the manifestations of years of counter-terror operations that a certain mindset has set in unfortunately in the Indian military, which I think we should have changed by now, because 2 years the PLA, we are having problems with them in Ladakh, but unfortunately the focus still remains Pakistan. It's a focus which has been there for very long, we've got used to it, and perhaps we are mentally very lazy to now shift the gaze.
Thank you, Pravin. Thank you so much. I'd like to go to Xiaoqiang. Xiaoqiang, how do you see, I mean, for example, we have the border dispute between, China and India, but China also is playing an emerging role in South Asia as a region and the Indo-Pacific and others. It's building relationships with countries like Bangladesh, Sri Lanka and others. How do you see China's role in the future of peace and stability in South Asia?
I think it's a good question. I think China, is very friendly to all South Asian countries. Although China has now facing some challenges because of with India, because of the border issues. But we still, I think, in the last year, China-India trade relations still have better than before. It's a proof that although China-India has security challenges, there is still room for both countries to in the areas have common interests, including the trade, including how to help the neighboring countries such as Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Afghanistan, to develop its economy and benefit all the people in the region. So, first, China insists on peaceful development, and China is not a strategic threat to India, I think. Second, China fairly safeguards national sovereignty and will never engage in aggression and expansion. As Ambassador Hamid has mentioned just now that China will become a hegemony. I think in the history, China has no such history as hegemony, whereas no such experience as the United States do something of hegemony. China will look at South Asia as backyard of China. China look at South Asia as potential areas for cooperation among China, India, and regional countries. So China will insist on China. That will say China will sacrifice our security interests because of the potential development or potential common interest. China insists on safeguarding China's sovereignty, security, and development interest. Third, I think China advocates win-win cooperation and opposes zero-sum games. As for the future of China-India relations, I personally always has confidence, because of China-Indian friendship has a long history, over 2,000 years of peaceful coexistence. The friendship is in the fundamental interest of two countries, two peoples. In 2021, China-India economy and trade still grows. It's a proof that I think the countries will have a bright future after the gradually strategic understand and the deficit of the security understanding improve. Let's see one thing. Second, for China, CPEC is very important for the future development. The construction of CPEC has significantly improved Pakistan's business environment and greatly increased Pakistan's attractive to foreign investment. Many countries have expressed interest in joining CPEC. Also, CPEC has benefited China's development. For the future, I think fact has improved that CPEC is being recognized and participated by more and more countries. With extension of a corridor as a demonstration project of the high-quality construction of the Belt and the Road, the CPEC will surely benefit more relevant countries and the people of China and Pakistan, and the people of the region. Thirdly, is that I think the CPEC will extend to Afghanistan and will benefit the future economy and trade of Afghanistan. As the ambassador mentioned, that the integration of economy and trade between Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Central Asia will helpful to these regional countries to improve their security challenges, including the dual line, the border issue, and also the terrorism issue. So in the future, I think China's role is in the South Asia is very constructive and helpful. We have a common shared common future of destiny with the regional country and regional people, and also with this development or the China's involvement in South Asia, the security in this region will be better. Thank you.
Thank you. So before I come to you, Wakana, I just want to we have a pretty full house today to listen to this fantastic, and I'm going to take 15 minutes. We're going to go a little bit over our time so that we can take some questions from students and others who are over here and are interested in asking questions. But before that, I'll pose my last question to Wakana Mukai, that, one of the really fundamental questions that a lot of people are asking is the UN system, is the international order, the equitable rules-based international order, as we used to refer to it, we still do, is it functional even? If large countries and important countries feel that, their interests are not being taken on board, we are seeing a multitude of bilateral or multilateral sanction regimes coming up across the world. Pakistan, for example, 2 of our neighbors are sanctioned. And so these raise fundamental questions about, when you talk about the need for cooperation and the need for resolving and rebuilding trust, I mean, we really need to answer this question of whether that equitable order exists, and if it's facing challenges, how can we overcome those challenges?
Thank you very much for that really, really hard question. I guess the really simple way to answer your question is, what would the world look like if we do not have any rules? So I think even if these rules do not function as we hope it would, still a no-rule world is a lot worse than having these rules. And I guess the same thing goes to the UN system as well. There are a lot of flaws. There are lots of downsides with the current UN system. But again, I would personally not want to see a world without no UN systems or rules. So again, rule-based, a rule-based community, a rule-based world is important, and I think that would become a fundamental part or fundamental starting point for the international community to think of how we can act as a respectful actor in this world. Because again, as I said in my remarks, we all live on the same planet, and we do need to come to a certain understanding of how to manage this world, even if we do have difference, even if we do have different opinions among each other, we still have to think of some sort of way to cooperate with each other. And I think that way, or that path, or that starting point would be to have a certain rule, a certain world order, a certain system that we can rely upon.
Great, thank you. I think you make a brilliant point that where this rules-based order comes from, was after two very terrible wars in the last century. And we should not forget that the world has gone through a number of conflicts, and having rules really is, better than not having any. So thank you for that intervention, Wakana. Before we go to questions, I just have some housekeeping announcements to make. Yesterday we also had a full house, and two students or two participants seem to have lost. One person lost their wallet and another person lost their ID card. So if any of you people are here today, please talk to the control room where they manage the the internet and everything, and they can give that back to you. Of those of you who've not collected your phones after the first closed session, please after the session go to the front desk, the entry registration desk, and collect your phones. Lastly, we'll have a lunch break after questions. We've arranged lunch for everybody, and then the next session will start at 2:30 sharp, and I hope that all of you can come and join us for that session, because it's got an extremely exciting panel on international law, lawfare, and the challenges that international law poses for the world at large today and for Pakistan specifically. So with that, I'll open the floor for questions, and I'll try and take questions from all sides. I think the National Security Advisor wants to say something. Has a question. Moeed Yusuf. Yeah. And please, if you can introduce yourself and tell exactly who you are addressing the question to. The rules apply to you too, sir.
Yes, Moeed Yusuf. I'm the National Security Advisor. I couldn't resist. Pravin is sitting here, Ambassador Janjua is sitting there. Advise the government of Pakistan, what do we do on the India policy?
Could I do the first one?
Yes, please, Janjua, Ambassador Janjua.
Well, the fact is that the government of Pakistan has made several overtures to India, and the response has been not positive. And therefore it is important that we must keep in mind that the overtures have been made. Now it is up to the government of India to decide what they want, what kind of relationship they want to have with Pakistan. We need to look at the reality that in India, I appreciate the comment that was made by Mr. Sawhney that there is the Constitution of India. But the reality is that the Constitution of India is being infringed repeatedly with what's happening in Kashmir and what's happening inside India. So my recommendation to the government of Pakistan at this point would be to wait and see whether there is any rational response from the Indian side. Of course, I do, as a diplomat, our first priority is to ensure that we have peace and we have the friendliest of relationship with all countries within the region and elsewhere as well. But our best efforts have not been responded, and unfortunately it's been taken as a weakness in India that Pakistan is repeatedly asking for dialogue. Pakistan should be confident in itself, and Pakistan should wait and see what the response from India is. We have to see what the elections do, and what is the rhetoric going to be when the elections take place in India, and that rhetoric is not going to be comfortable or easy for Pakistan. And this unfortunate incident, though we should not link it to the elections or elsewhere, but we've seen in the past that Pulwama was an election drama as well that was played out. This missile that was the BrahMos that was shot at Pakistan. I have heard Mr. Swamy say that it was it was a conventional one and does not have the payload, would not, under the circumstances of where it was fired from, would not have a nuclear payload. But the response from our side, while very legitimate, very mature, very rational, was there, and I think it should be appreciated by the international community. The army chiefs referred to the return of Abhinandan as well as a clear reflection of Pakistan's maturity in responding to India. But that maturity is not forthcoming on the Indian side, and therefore I think we need to watch closely of the developments in India. We can have discussions outside formal discussions, because formal discussions will lead us nowhere at this point in time. But as was said earlier, the dialogue is important. So such dialogue as we are undertaking right now is important and useful. But the response from the Indian side has not been positive. All they want is their own agenda. They ask for the trade to be opened between Pakistan and India. There was a discussion a few weeks back in a dialogue that was held in Islamabad, and I asked, have we done our homework? Have we done sector by sector analysis of what trade with India would do to Pakistan for Pakistan's different sectors? And I was told by one of our foreign delegates that no, don't worry, there's going to be no problem to Pakistan. Only two sectors will be affected. One, agriculture, and the second would be textile. Unfortunately, these are our most important sectors as well. So we have to do an analysis before we look at the agenda that's being presented.
I hate to pause you, Mahsen Janjua. You were speaking so eloquently. Unfortunately, because of the paucity of time, and
sure.
Mohit, you've posed the question to two people. That's very unfair. So, Pravin Saab, short answer, please, so that we can take as many questions.
See, I can actually suggest, what I would suggest is please do some out-of-the-box thinking, as they say. And it should be a three-pronged action by Pakistan. This is my suggestion. The first prong of that is development. Keep focusing on that, because that is important. You have the opportunity today. The digital connectivity, work on that. You can do a lot with the digital connectivity. As I said, people don't have to travel to big cities. They can do their business on mobile only. So a mobile sort of will provide you the livelihood. So keep doing development. That's one. Number two, as already mentioned by the Chief of the Army Staff, you have to build your capabilities, and you know the areas. He has mentioned cyber also. You have already set up a CENT-AIC, Center for Artificial Intelligence. You have good relations with the PLA. PLA can help you. The whole idea is try and build asymmetrical capabilities, and that is very much possible, because keep in mind that today I'm speaking as an Indian, but I'm just talking as a neutral analyst now. So please keep in mind that the forces of India today are divided on two fronts. All the capabilities are divided. So therefore what you have to do is, and it's your good fortune that because India did 5th August 2019, so your core interest always was Kashmir. Now we by India doing this, what they have done, Ladakh also has become a problem with China. So basically now there is a marrying up of the two problems, two big concerns of China and Pakistan in that theater. So I am sure from interoperability you can meet to go to the combined operations that General Janjua would know what it is. And the third thing what you have to do is please exercise patience. This is something you have to learn from your strategic partner because they are the ones. We had Wang Yi coming into India. Despite the fact he knew very well nothing will come out of it, but still he came and he spoke of development there. And the last thing I would say is, please leave the heavy lifting to the PLA. They are keeping the Indian military engaged. We are engaged there. We are round the clock there at heights of 15,000, 20,000. That saps away a lot of finances, a lot of energy, and it is an open forum, so please still try not to quote me and follow the Chatham rules.
Okay, so I will have to ask you to really ask short questions because I'm sure everybody wants to ask questions. Mustafa.
Thank you so much. My question is towards Ambassador Khalilizad. What keeps me up at night is the fact that you talked about this rules-based order, but that was based on the generational learning that happened after the two great wars, and you see that generation phasing out and the rise of right-wing and ultranationalism, and also of other actors, the middle-tier powers, being uneasy with these rule-based system and challenging how the major powers have done so. Along with that, you also see the securitization coming out of the security challenges, whether it be Russia, Ukraine, and you talked about this in terms of Japan and Germany. Wouldn't all of that combined become a self-fulfilling prophecy and lead to the chances of great wars happening or miscalculations happening far more? Because yes, we've been through a Cold War. Now, whatever the colder war may be, we were also
short,
very
I said short question, and you.
So my final.
I think it was understood.
You were very lucky in Cold War. How do you see that?
Understood. Understood.
Thank you.
I believe that among all the factors that you mentioned, the key would be, in terms of the rules, what China would want the rules to be and what adjustment it will push for as its power increases, as we become crystallized into a bipolar system over time. And one of the concerns is that China may not, or at least may want to adjust or change the rules that have been governing the international architecture in the current or in the previous balance, that it wasn't present at the creation of some of these rules. And so that's one of the challenges that we face. But there are things that could be learned from the previous such period. World War I happened almost by sleepwalking nations, powers into a war. World War II happened because the balance of power was not really observed. There was a degree of appeasement, of looking the other way. Cold War was avoided not only because of deterrence issues, which were important, nuclear, but the issue of balance and the domestic circumstances, the containment policy there did prove effective, although it was very dangerous. We came close to war several times. So in the case of this coming equation, in my view, we can learn from those lessons, from those periods, from the previous conflicts, or avoidance of conflict. So, but I think it's going to be an exceptionally dangerous period that we are in my judgment, in terms of until there is stability as a result of an architecture that doesn't lead to miscalculation and conflict. And that's not going to be easy, but it's not impossible, and it must be tried.
Thank you, Ambassador Khalilizad. Now, I'm going to first ask people to raise their hand who have a question for either Xiaoqiang or Wakana Mukai. Ambassador Durrani. He's in Afghanistan.
Hello there, this is Asif Durrani, I'm former ambassador. And my question is to Ambassador Khalilizad.
Sir.
That United States withdrew from Afghanistan under an agreement and hopefully amicably. If this withdrawal was amicable, then why this hostility is being displayed right now? That you have squeezed Afghanistan, its banking system has been paralyzed, there are sanctions. So the question was, were you right earlier when you signed the agreement, or you are wrong now that you are displaying hostility towards the whole of Afghanistan?
Thank you, Ambassador Durrani.
Thank you. It's good to see you, Ambassador. The problem really is that the agreement hasn't been fully implemented. I think the agreement is really the path to normalcy between Afghanistan and the United States. There are elements of the agreement that have been implemented. The withdrawal has happened, which was the key demand of the Taliban. They wanted a withdrawal. But there are three other elements of the agreement. There was arrangement and guarantees on counterterrorism that the Taliban had entered into, and there is an annex attached to the agreement that describes that in some detail. That needs to be fully implemented because that was the give in exchange for the give on the part of the U.S. Third is a political settlement negotiations. Now the republic disintegrated, but we all know, and you know Afghanistan quite well, so that there has to be some legitimization of the Taliban's preeminence through some process, a loijarga or whatever process needs to happen, so that they come into compliance with the third element, because right now they are talking themselves as this happened as a result of conquest. Their language internally says they took over, it was a fath that happened, not the negotiations that produced this. Poses a problem for the United States as a signatory to that agreement. And the fourth one is a ceasefire, that comprehensive and permanent ceasefire has happened. But there are demands that the Talibs have requirements. So I have suggested, and even in the last couple of days, that we need to sit together, and the Taliban and the United States, to see how what hasn't happened in terms of their demands in the agreement or their requirements in the agreement and ours, and have a implementation of the remaining issues agreed upon, sequencing what each side will do. So the way that what happened ultimately on August 15 and afterwards complicated and produced what we see today. And so therefore that's the path that I see, a commitment to the agreement and implementing elements that have not been implemented yet.
Thank you. We're going to take three more questions from different parts of the hall. And I'm going to take the questions first, and then we'll just do the last round of responses. Please state who your question is for. The first, this gentleman has been waiting for quite a while. Yusuf, in the front. And please, short. If you go into
Thank
a
you
long
for giving me the opportunity.
question, I will stop.
I am Jamlal from Khalilizad University. My question to you, especially
one person,
Madam Janjua. Today we are hearing everywhere that geoeconomy has become a key term for contemporary politics. I hope this term doesn't...
Your question, please.
Yeah, the question is, the solo focus on geoeconomy doesn't gloss over the main debate of territorial dispute between India and Pakistan. And keeping in view...
I think she understood your question, right? So, just one question per person. Anybody on the back there? Okay, that gentleman over there at the back. In that sort of area.
Assalamu alaikum everyone. I'm Ali Jabir, Environmental and Defense Correspondent from State Media Associated Press of Pakistan. My question is for Mr. Fu. Would you think China should also, roll out the BRI initiative to India as well as it did in the case of Iran, as Iran was considering Gwadar as rival to its Shah Baharpur. So this situation has been resolved in that context. So don't you think when the Chinese NSA yesterday said that China's development is for Asia, from Asia, and that will benefit Asia, keeping that vision up front, will China should do that effort to bring India in BRI as well, so that long-standing issue...
Okay, thank you. I think that was clear. That's about whether China will make an effort to bring India into the BRI. Any questions from this side? We haven't taken any yet, so please can the gentleman in the middle? And please state who your question is for.
Assalamu alaikum, General Masood, Iraqi military attaché. Mr. Zalmay, my question is, what about Daesh? Daesh is, national security is very dangerous for, especially for Syria, Iraq, this Middle East.
Yes.
Daesh come back again or finish no more Daesh or move in another maybe coming in this situation?
Thank you. Now, I'll take one more question, but only if it's for Wakana Mukai. Right? If it's for Wakana Mukai, otherwise there's the gentleman over there in the second row. Third row.
Assalamu alaikum. I am Zoe from MPhil scholar from Khalilizad University. My question is, great powers have their own concerns. Who will take initiative to resolve issues like Palestine and Kashmir? Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we have questions almost for everybody. So first question was for Ambassador Janjua on whether geoeconomics will not overtake the question of territorial dispute of Kashmir between India and Pakistan. So quick answer, Ambassador Janjua.
I don't think so. I think geoeconomics has a different perspective, but Kashmir continues to remain a very important foreign policy priority and will remain on the agenda of the Foreign Office and Pakistan.
Thank you. Rightly said, Kashmir remains a core national interest for Pakistan. Xiaoqiang, the question to you was whether China will consider including India as part of BRI.
BRI is open development project. I think every country is possible to be included in this project. So I think in the future, BRI, CPIC is open first to the regional countries. China, Pakistan, Iran, India, and the Arab countries. They have a good opportunity to not only cooperate in BRI, but also in the future, in the security cooperation to realize peace and the development of this important region. Pakistan was a very important country, I think, in this region. Pakistan is located in the strategic location and has a bright future, I think. Thank you.
Thank you. Ambassador Zalmay, you were next. Your question was on Daesh.
Daesh has not gone away. It is weakened in the Middle East as well as in Afghanistan. And depending on what is done, it could gain strength in some part of the Middle East. It has become stronger again in recent time. And so the challenge of terrorism remains, and Daesh is a key component of this problem of terrorism right now.
Thank you, Ambassador. Wakana, Mukai, the question to you was that great powers in this competition have their own interests, and amongst this interest, questions like the Palestinian question, the Kashmir question, and other long lingering disputes that have troubled the world are being forgotten, and efforts are not being made to resolve those. So how will that happen, and how can those be resolved? Over to you.
I think thank you very much. I think those issues are not being neglected. Rather, I think international security and regional security are intertwined. So balancing both regional security and international security would be important to solve either the international problem and a regional security.
Thank you, Wakana. I would like to thank the audience, but more especially our wonderful panelists today. They're all experts in their own fields. I would like to thank Ambassador Zalmay Khalilizad, Ambassador Janjua, Pravin Sawhney, Xiaoqiang, and Wakana Mukai for taking part and helping all of this great audience and those listening to us online talk about the challenges to international security. Thank you all very much. It was wonderful hosting you all, and our guests are more than welcome to join us for lunch. Please stay. We have an even more interesting panel coming up on international law. We hope that all of you can join us after lunch at 2:30. Looking forward. Thank you very much.